Sorry, I realized halfway through that recording that you weren't able to see my face. So hopefully this will be helpful now that you can see my face. So we are on problem number 2. The time t in seconds that it takes for light to travel a distance d in kilometers is given by the formula, and there we have the formula. Again, we have c is given to us as a scientific notation. Speed of light in a vacuum. The distance between the sun and the earth is 1.5. So remember that d is distance. So this guy right here is going to be the distance. Calculate the time taken that it takes for the light from the sun to reach the earth. We're going to put it into standard form, which means scientific notation. And then we're going to take that and just turn it into the nearest minute, because realize that right now it is in seconds, kilometers per second. And then we're going to take that and convert it into a minute. So first things first, we just need to figure out what is the time that it takes. So we're going to plan first, write down our formula. T equals D over C. D is the distance, which is 1.5 times 10 to the 8th power, kilometers. C is 3.0 times 10 to the 5th kilometers per second. Again, that weird rate with that -1 exponent. So now that we have all the pieces of information, we can even say T equals question mark. We have T equals, we're going to do 1.5 times 10 to the 8th divided by 3.0 times 10 to the 5th. You can plug this into your calculator. A heads up, you need to make sure that when you divide, you put this entire denominator into parentheses. If you do not, you're telling your calculator to do something totally different. So just make sure to put parentheses in the denominator. You do not have to do parentheses for the numerator, although it's good practice to just use parentheses as much as you possibly can, because you don't want to mess something up and not know until after you're done with the test. So there we go. We have the numerator divided by the denominator, and we get this, which is not in scientific notation. It's 500. So we can write down 500, and then we just need to turn it into scientific notation because that's the way it was asked to be given. So we know that if we don't see the decimal is at the end. We know that we want that decimal to be after the first digit, which is 5. Remember, we want to be between 1 and 10. In order to move this decimal to that decimal, we need to move it twice. So I know that I'm going to do 5.0 times 10 to the 2nd power. We know that it has to be positive because this is a big number. So that is your time in seconds. So let's say S for seconds. That is your time in scientific notation. So then if we want to take that time and turn it into a minute, we can say 500 seconds. We know that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. And if we're trying to convert measurements, we know that we need to have the seconds be on the bottom, so the units will cancel out and we're left with the minute on top. We know that 1 minute is 60 seconds, so then that's going to be our conversion. So that means that we need to divide 560. Or if that doesn't make sense to you, we know that we need to do 500 times 1 divided by 60, which is just saying divide by 60. All right, and our answer is 8.33 repeating. And it says to the nearest minute, which means we need to round to a whole number. We're going to look at that whole number, look at the number afterwards. The 3 tells us that we want to round down, which means that that's going to round to 8 minutes. It takes roughly 8 minutes for light to travel from the sun to the earth. In 2006, China had 1.311 times 10 to the 8th internet users. That same year, Japan had 9.09 times 10 to the 7th internet users. How many internet users did the two countries have combined? So if we're talking about combining two numbers, that means that we are going to do addition. When you're doing addition with scientific notation by hand, it is really sticky and it has a few tricks because you need to make sure that you have the same base with exponents because of how you do operations with exponents, but you don't need to even worry about that because all we're going to do is use our calculator. 1.311 times 10 to the 8th power. I'm going to put that in parentheses. That in parentheses. Always good to have parentheses where applicable. Plus parentheses 9.09 times 10 to the 7th power. And we get this number right here, which is really, really big and not in scientific notation. So we're just going to have to turn it back into scientific notation. So that is 2, 2, 2, and then I'm going to count the zeros, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To turn that into scientific notation, we know that the decimal is here. We're going to jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it becomes 2.22 times 10 to the positive 8th power because it is a big number. About 8.73 times 10 to the 8th people in the world speak Chinese. About 3.22 times 10 to the 8th people speak Spanish. In scientific notation, how many more people speak Chinese than Spanish? So we're talking about how many more. 5 is how many more than 3. 10 is how many more than 5, right? So if you think about these numbers, if you're being asked something in a sentence to do something in mathematics, and you're not sure what operation to use, take that word and apply it with super easy numbers, right? It's saying, okay, well, 8.73 times 10 to the 8th is how much more than 3.2 times 10 to the 8th? Well, take that and say, well, 5 is how much more than 2, or 10 is how much more than 3, and then see, okay, well, how would I answer that question when it's just a really easy number? And then that's kind of a nice hint for you to be like, oh, this is the operation I would be using. So hopefully by now you realize that the operation we're going to be using is subtraction. We have more Chinese speakers than we have Spanish, so that's going to go in the front. 8.73 times 10 to the 8th minus 3.22 times 10 to the 8th. And I'm going to again put it in parentheses. Minus 3.22 times 10 to the 8th. And we get, again, not in scientific notation, write it out, and then we'll turn it into scientific notation. So we get 5, 5, 1, and again, 6 zeros. We're going to take this decimal that's at the end and move it over till it's after that first digit. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jumps. That becomes 5.51 times 10 to the 8th. More people. Take a second and think about that. When we are comparing these numbers and you notice that the exponents are the same and we've just got a difference of 3.22 and 8.73, I'm sure you might be sitting there being like, oh, it's not that many more. And then you might be a little bit surprised, right? But realize that the difference between these two is 5.51. That's 5.51 times 10 to the 8th. That is a lot more people who speak. So sometimes it's really easy to lose track of how large these numbers are when we are using scientific notation. We lose the context of it. So it's important to realize that scientific notation, while it makes it easier to manage, it also makes it a lot easier to misunderstand the numbers that we are using because you don't fully understand the true extent of what this number is and relationship of those numbers to each other. The population of the German cities Munich and Frankfurt in 2017 were 1.43 times 10 to the 6th and 7.76 times 10 to the 5th, respectively, which means that they're matching up the order, right? So this is the first one, so it goes with the first city. This is the second one, so it goes with the second city. That's what it means by respectively. How many more people live in Munich than in Frankfurt? Again, how many more? So go ahead and figure out what you think you're going to do. I'm going to do it silently here so you can check your information, use your calculator. You've got this. Okay, go ahead and check your work. Make sure you feel confident in this. If you're still really struggling on how to convert back and forth or what we do, how we use our calculator, all of those things, just make sure that you write down your questions that you have right now. And the next time I see you is what class time is for, is to ask those questions before you practice it on your own. I will see you soon.